Welcome. My name is Marcia Morphy from University News Services at Rochester Institute of Technology. Consumer debt among American college students is at an all-time high. To the rescue is Dr. Robert Manning, author of Credit Card Nation and research professor of Consumer Financial Services at RIT's E. Philip Saunders College of Business. He joins us now. Welcome, Dr. Manning.
Marcia, it's a pleasure to be joining you today.
How and why are credit card companies targeting college students?
Marcia, today the college student is the prized market niche of the banking industry. These are young people with very little financial experience and knowledge and very little debt when they come to college. So for banks, they have literally an opportunity to shape their attitudes towards credit and debt, determine how much consumer debt they can have, and then add them to their data banks so that they can market them student loans, car loans, after graduation, home mortgages, as well as insurance products and eventually investment services.
What steps are you taking here at RIT to address those kinds of issues? Any new programs in place?
Marcia, I'm proud to be at RIT because we're very concerned about the issue of personal financial literacy and responsibility for personal finances. Beginning with freshman orientation, we have required programs for students as well as their parents to attend workshops on the importance of a good credit score, budgeting, and planning and prudent use of consumer credit. We have required first-year enrichment programs where students again learn life skills in regard to budgeting, use of consumer credit, and planning for investment in the future. We have a general education program which includes a personal financial course, which can be both an elective, which goes through the full gauntlet of consumer financial activities from budgeting to use of consumer credit to insurance as well as investing. Then we have a series of workshops throughout the year as students become more advanced in their use of consumer credit, such as purchasing a car, to even when they graduate, assistance with debt management skills, as well as investing and planning for their financial future and even retirement. As well, to this year, we've founded the Center for Consumer Financial Services, which is a research center that addresses public policy, concrete research questions such as changes in the bankruptcy bill, as well as product development for the financial services industry, including, of course, education for personal finance as well. And next year we'll be launching our new Bachelor of Science program in Consumer Financial Services with 3 new degree programs. We expect that this will catapult RIT into the national limelight in terms of becoming a center of information as well as future employees in the dynamic consumer financial service sector.
Do or don't, should college students have credit cards?
You know, that's always the question, is when is somebody ready to use consumer credit? To me, it's like driving a high-performance sports car. We don't just give somebody keys to the car and tell them to drive it. They have to have some licensing requirements. So I encourage those who don't have any personal financial experience with money to start on a cash basis writing checks, graduate themselves the next quarter to getting a debit card, which is an electronic version of a check, and then when they feel comfortable, they can graduate to a credit card with a line of credit of about $500 the first year. With the responsible use of that credit, then I would encourage that the line of credit be raised $500 each year to a maximum of $2,500 per year. And in this way, there's no student without the financial means of attending college that would actually have to drop out because they had too much financial debt on their credit cards.
Is there any peer group influence in the way a college student would say, yes, I need this computer or whatever, and say, well, then I'll just put it on my credit card?
Yeah. You know, Marcia, you've raised a really good question, and that's the phenomenon of competitive consumption on college campuses, where we see the blurring of the distinction between a good debt and a bad debt. You know, if you're going to charge your college expenses and it's going to help you graduate, clearly one could associate that with good debt. If one needs a winter coat, one would associate borrowing that as a good debt. But when one goes from a $100 need for a winter coat to a $500 desire for a winter coat, the credit card can lead the unsuspecting and inexperienced credit user down that slippery slope of financial insolvency.
How did your book, Credit Card Nation, become the impetus for a documentary, In Debt We Trust?
You know, Marcia, in the last 12 months, my book has been the centerpiece of 3 different documentaries. One on PBS, an independent documentary recently released, as well as the centerpiece of the In Debt We Trust, America Before the Bevel Burst documentary, which I'm pleased has been directed and produced by the Emmy Award-winning director, Danny Schechter. And in this case, Danny had read my book. It had been recommended to him. He had invited to discuss with me how I would look at developing a movie based on the primary themes of the book. We actually sat down and mapped out different segments of the book and what kinds of interviews we would use and need. And then I did a lot of the research and the supplementary information in terms of making this documentary as accurate and as contemporary as possible. So I served both as the editorial advisor as well as being featured in some segments of the movie.
Let's take a look at a scene in the documentary which was filmed here right at RIT.
Today's our first day of freshman orientation. Over 2,000 freshmen from all over the country, in fact all over the world, are here. Some have a little bit more familiarity of managing their own personal finances than others. And I start off here with an antique savings bank. We used to train children to enjoy savings. Today we're training them to enjoy how to spend.
We're in the fight to save people's lives. People are getting into debt. I mean, every day that's just way beyond what they can handle. When you meet someone that's 18, 19 years old and they're telling you how they're, $15,000, $20,000 in credit card debt, no one ever sat them down and explained, what it was like to try to get a job if your credit score was really messed up. I get the feeling a lot of times working with Dr. Manning that we're David and the credit card companies are Goliath. They have the mass media campaigns behind them, the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and all we have is the truth.
Manning's lecture the next day packs them in, a sign of widespread alarm about so many kids leaving college with an average of $20,000 of debt.
Of this issue? Well, many of you probably have forgotten that the American Revolution was largely driven by the great American planners that were heavily in debt to European banks. And they had very onerous terms. And they recognized that they could not financially prosper under such outrageous financial demands. So part of the American Revolution was to break enslavement from financial debt.
As a leading critic of the credit card industry, you made guest appearances on everything from 60 Minutes to CBS Evening News with Bob Schieffer to Comedy Central, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. What kind of track record is that? What does that say about your audience?
Well, I think what's key here is as we've gone from a manufacturing society where people pretty much lived on the income that they were making each week to a consumer society that's driven by credit and consumer debt, now we see that people are all encompassed in terms of how credit cards impact their daily lives. And whether it's at a personal level and the public culture and popular expressions of credit cards as yuppie food stamps, whether it's the transvestite that has named himself Ms. Visa Decline, to whether it's we're all discussing whether we're maxed out or not and how close we are to the end of how much trust the bank has in us in terms of extending us credit. I think what's critical in terms of the larger body of my work is that I've tried to translate the dollars and cents version of consumer credit and debt from the bank's perspective to the social component and the social outcomes and influences that credit has from our daily lives. Whether it's an enhancement and improves our quality of life, whether it provides the prudent and foresightful to make money through investments for people that are trying to bridge themselves from a crisis or an emergency, whether it's health care, losing a job or a family crisis, to its people who have found themselves keeping up with the Joneses and suddenly encumbered with debt and not knowing where to turn to for assistance or for help next. So I think that throughout all of these different media, the social component of credit and debt has been illuminated that we all can relate to. And that's the attraction, I believe, of my work to them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manning.
Thank you, Marcia.